welcome to the Fast Mode podcast series. I'm Tara Neil, and with me today is Chris McHenry, Chief Product Officer at Aviatrix. Aviatrix is a cloud network security expert. The company is on a mission to make cloud networking simple so companies stay agile. Trusted by more than 500 of the world's leading enterprises, its cloud networking platform creates the visibility, security, and control needed to adapt with ease and move ahead at speed. Chris helps customers solve the new and unique challenges of networking within and between multiple clouds. He's an expert in multi-cloud networking, cloud cost management, zero trust networking, and microsegmentation. Welcome, Chris. Great to have you on today's episode.
Thank you, Tara. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Okay, so let's dive right in. We have all heard about cloud environments, and how people are migrating to cloud environments, putting their workloads here. So, talking about security, let's discuss why are security risks more common in these new cloud environments compared to traditional networks?
Yeah, so there's several different reasons. I always want to ground. I think a lot of things in business and in enterprises really ultimately are grounded by people and the dynamics of organizations. And one of the interesting things about cloud is that it started off about 10 years ago, really selling to developers and giving developers the ability to move fast,
Mm-hmm.
to be agile, to deploy their own applications. And one of the challenges there is that developers are not security experts. So when you think about one of the fundamental shifts with cloud, it's that the developer was there first. And
Mm-hmm.
in many cases, the security teams are trying to catch up. So the second piece of this, right, is that in addition to developers getting into the cloud and starting to do self-service and shadow IT, and we've seen that story play out multiple different times. It's actually honestly very similar to when the iPhone was released, and everybody got an iPhone and they're like, oh, okay, cool. Well, I want my email on my iPhone, and security's like,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, 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 I don't know
Yep.
what to do here, right? So
Mm-hmm.
so
Yep.
cloud was kind of like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a little bit more severe for a couple different reasons. The first one is that the workloads, the things that are getting put in the cloud, are the sensitive data of the organization, right? It's
Yep.
the applications that run the business. And so if I go think about, hey, I want to go as an attacker exfiltrate a bunch of social security numbers, it's probably going to live in the cloud. If
Mm-hmm.
I am an attacker and I want to take down business operations by, halting your website, it's in the cloud, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
criticality of the things that are running in the cloud for the business are really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
And the last piece is that um, to serve the developers, and because of the fact that our businesses now run on the internet, the cloud
Mm-hmm.
providers made it incredibly easy to put those critical workloads on the internet. And the internet
Mm-hmm.
fundamentally is the thing. Um, it's both the thing that is the fundamental problem for cybersecurity and
Yep.
a absolute necessity for businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that it's super, super easy to put critical applications on the internet and security is getting there, is playing catch up, they're working from behind,
Mm-hmm.
makes it a huge security risk if it's not treated properly.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So, as you have said, it's so enticing for people to just take the entire workload off premises and just push it to the cloud. But like, you pointed out, these guys who do that, who are in charge of that, are not really the security experts. And that's where the vulnerabilities come to play. So, apart from that, this being attributed to user types, are there any other reasons? Like you did mention about sensitive data, so people know that there's lots of data and lots of value in that data. So that's really another factor that lures them. Is there any other push for people to target workloads in the cloud apart from
Yeah.
this?
I mean, it has everything to do with ease of access on the internet. So another visualization that I give for people that's like a fundamental shift when workloads move to the cloud
Mm-hmm.
is that on premises, There used to be, I presented at a number of conferences, obviously, over the years. And for a while, one of the jokes that I used to tell
Mm-hmm.
was that if you wanted to secure your organization, you should just cut the cable between you and the internet. And like it's this visualization, and oh, by
Yes,
the
yes.
way, right? Exactly. And oh, by the way, like, 10 years ago, that was a physical cable. Right,
Yep.
you
Yep.
had a data center, and you had
Mm-hmm.
a contract with Verizon and a
Mm-hmm.
contract with AT&T, and there are two
Mm-hmm.
cables coming into your data center, and they both physically plug into a firewall. And if you actually got ransomware and all of a sudden you're trying to cut off the attacker, you literally could go unplug those cables.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
now, when we get to the cloud,
Mm-hmm.
all of that is virtual. None of
Mm-hmm.
it exists. And it takes me
Yeah.
seconds to establish a new connection between my enterprise and the internet.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the most critical control points in
Yep.
enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thing
Mm-hmm.
that you could cut off. It's the thing that you made sure you inspected every single bit of traffic.
Mm-hmm.
Fundamental things like, being able to only allow connections outbound to authorized services,
Mm-hmm.
only allow certain, make sure that only, traffic coming in gets inspected or gets forwarded through a web application firewall, some sort of security stack. You had that physical choke point.
Mm-hmm.
There's a reason they call it a firewall, right? Like it's physical. The firewalls in the physical world are the things that prevent fires from going from one part of a building to another part of the building. You have
Exactly.
to have that choke point. And so
Mm-hmm.
a lack of physicality really does two things for us. One, it explodes the perimeter. So
Mm-hmm.
if we assume that the internet is the fundamental challenge,
Mm-hmm.
the more places that you connect to the internet, the more potential places that attackers can come in and come out of your environment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And now you make the mistake of connecting those things together because, oh, by the way, that application that I deployed in the cloud depends on a database in my data center.
Mm-hmm.
Man, we just turned a house that had one door into a house that has 1,000 doors.
Yep.
That's a problem. And not only does it have 1,000 doors, you have no control over how things move laterally once they get into the environment, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I could exploit that thing in the cloud because I need to connect back to the database on premises and I
Mm-hmm.
have a flat network. I can go anywhere I want, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's the explosion of the perimeter, the fact that now it's software defined instead of physical, the
Mm-hmm.
fact that even a lot of the networking is virtual and difficult in some respects to visualize and comprehend, and there's shared responsibility
Mm-hmm.
between the developers and the network security teams or the cyber teams. It is a much more complex landscape, and it has significantly more entry and exit points than it did in the past. And that really is that's the bigger, kind of the more detailed description of the problem. We
Mm-hmm.
have to
Wow.
figure out how to solve that. And there is this common concept in cybersecurity that's been around for, again, about 15 years now. I think it started with the iPhone and mobile devices,
Mm-hmm.
that they call deperimeterization. And
Mm-hmm.
I do not like that term because it sounds like you're giving up. And it's like the most important thing for us to consider is how do we control those entry and exit points? And
Yes.
how do
Yeah.
we control how people move once they get in?
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that the internet is so much more accessible in the cloud
Mm-hmm.
really is the fundamental challenge.
Wow. So we are looking like, at hundreds of entry points, and you can't basically secure all those points because, like you said, even visualizing it, it's already a huge thing,
Yes.
because you don't know like who's talking to which workload is talking to which, and with the APIs and every traffic is like. And if you have distributed architectures, then that's another issue altogether. So, and a lot of users, a lot of admins with different privileges and stuff. So, yeah, we can imagine the complexities of that. Do you think enterprises are aware when they make these choices to move to cloud hosting? Do you think they have the expertise and the awareness, or they just go with the flow?
So I would say at a high level, I think we have a massive skill gap in the cybersecurity industry, period,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
so whether they're aware or not is definitely, I find it to be at different levels of maturity at different organizations.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught, but I do think in many cases they're aware. And one of the
Mm-hmm.
challenges is how do you is the fact that you can't take the exact same principles and
Mm-hmm.
do them effectively in cloud because of what you
Mm-hmm.
just described. The applications look different, like they're
Mm-hmm.
distributed.
Mm-hmm.
You might have more, you probably have more regions in the cloud than you ever had data centers.
Yeah.
So am I going to lift and shift that same, model that I had on premises into the cloud and hope that it works?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big challenge. And then the second one again goes back to that human dynamic. Well, the developers now are used to self-serving. They
Mm-hmm.
want to move fast, and oh, by the way, the business saw that they could, and
Mm-hmm.
they don't want them to slow down. And
Mm-hmm.
now we're into the world of AI. And what,
Mm-hmm.
as an IT professional, am I going to tell the business that you can't use AI? I think
Mm-hmm.
there is a power dynamic shift where security teams are really afraid now of coming
Yep.
into these brownfield environments and breaking the applications.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
it is really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
And we won't talk about aviatrix quite yet, but it's really important. Our mission statement talks about
Mm-hmm.
bringing together cloud, network, and security teams because I believe that it's important to turn security teams from somebody who typically says no to
Mm-hmm.
somebody who enables developers securely, right? So it's
Mm-hmm.
about how do I say yes, and you have to acknowledge the fact that the developers are going to want to move with speed, and
Yep.
consequently, you need to think about the same concepts, the same
Mm-hmm.
network security concepts, the same perimeter security concepts, but you need to be able to do them in a way that
Mm-hmm.
aligns with the cloud operational model. And that's the big shift. So I think people are aware. I think they're struggling because they don't know how to do it right with the technologies that they currently have in their technology stack.
Mm-hmm. And talking about that, and I think you have mentioned quite a few times, about this perimeter-based, or what we mean perimeter-based is those legacy security tools, right? So people still use those tools even when they have their workloads in the cloud. So what happens then if if you are not adequately prepared, to handle or to secure your cloud workloads, and you still fall back onto these legacy tools? What are some of the most common tools that are still being deployed?
Yeah, so I still I still see a lot of organizations deploying like their legacy firewalls in the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's really a suite of challenges with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one is how do you get the traffic to the firewall in the first place? Because again, it's not a physical cable anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
your networking gets incredibly complex trying to shoehorn traditional network security capabilities into the flow of traffic so that they can do their job.
Mm-hmm.
The second piece is even when you do that, if you're not careful, the developers can find ways around it anyways because they are, they have rights and privileges to change the configuration on it. So even when you think you have control, there's scenarios where you probably don't.
Mm-hmm.
You get performance problems. Firewalls in the cloud, when you centralize them in kind of the traditional mechanism that some organizations leverage. I've heard many examples of taking your entire cloud down or seeing performance challenges due to increased latency between applications. We actually saw this with a large hospitality provider when they were attempting to transition from their developer centric cloud architecture to a more security centric cloud architecture. Just
Mm-hmm.
by inserting the traditional firewall,
Mm-hmm.
they reduced the time, or they increased the time it took to serve their users when they were trying to book a hotel booking. They
Mm-hmm.
increased the time that it took to serve their users by 4 to 5x. That's
Wow,
unacceptable, right?
that's really,
It's
yep, yep.
right. So, but
Imagine.
now exactly because applications are designed to, they're microservices. They're communicating with each other back and forth. So some of these
Yep.
considerations, like especially if you're trying to insert security into a brownfield environment,
Mm-hmm.
can have really very tangible impacts on the application performance metrics. So again, we need to think differently.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last piece that I'll say is clouds are very dynamic. So it's not
Mm-hmm.
just distributed, they're very dynamic. So as
Mm-hmm.
applications get modernized and they move away from virtual machines to containers to serverless functions.
Mm-hmm.
We used to operate firewalls based on IP addresses, and now an application no longer has a predictable IP address.
Yep.
So the impact to that is, okay, now are you going to tell the developers that every time they redeploy their application in Kubernetes, they have to open a firewall change request and make sure that all the IPs are correct so that their rules work properly? No, absolutely not. What you're
Mm-hmm.
going to do is you're going to make your firewall dumber. You're going to
Yep.
just say, oh, Kubernetes can do whatever it wants. And we see that being very prevalent as well. So not only do you run the risk of cost challenges, performance challenges, but you also are progressively going to make your if you bring your traditional firewall into the cloud, you're going to progressively make it dumber and dumber. And so it really is um, it is incredibly important for organizations to consider how they do this in a way that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fight the cloud
Okay.
operational model, but aligns with the cloud operational model.
Yeah, I think you highlighted some very important facts there. You know, the fact that it's a dilemma, because we have all the performance pressures, and then you want to bring in the security portion of it, and that basically there's a huge trade-off, like what you mentioned. Yeah, it's a hotel booking,
There
not as
doesn't
critical.
have to be. There
Yeah, it
doesn't
doesn't have
have
to
to be.
be. Yeah, like
But
in
if you try to do the same thing, there
yeah.
will be.
Yep, yep, exactly. And I like the concept that you brought, like a developer-centric cloud architecture moving to a security-centric cloud architecture. So it, in a way, it basically there's a huge paradigm shift because now before you even develop your cloud stacks, you basically have to have your security plan ahead of that because you can't design everything and then try to slap on a security architecture. It might be too late, isn't it? Because you've already gotten everything configured and then you're like, oh, we forgot to secure these endpoints and those. And like what you mentioned, a lot of microservices, things are like very virtual. They can be spun up anytime. And then, you need to make sure that every workload that is spun up in every instance is now, safeguarded. So, yep, this is a lot of insights. So I think based on this, we know that you guys are in this field for very long, and you obviously have some great solutions. So can we learn a bit more about Aviatrix and especially about your cloud native security fabric?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of what we talked about is really the thing that motivates me and that drives our organization to build the technology that we build.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to that one of the first stories that I already told about cutting the cable between the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Another kind of example here is I was walking through RSA this year and just really had this kind of aha moment that none of this industry would exist if we didn't have to use the internet. And
Mm-hmm.
so that control point is just so critically important. And I also have spent a lot of my career working with enterprises. So I understand the dilemma that they're in, as we've just been talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And your point around making sure that your cloud is secure when you initially build it is very true. But the reality is, we have a lot of enterprises who can't afford to rebuild their clouds from scratch. So
Yep.
thinking about how can I like blanket security
Mm-hmm.
onto a brownfield environment, onto a
Mm-hmm.
greenfield environment, and instead of trying to go secure every single endpoint, which is like whack-a-mole, could
Mm-hmm.
I place those security controls in a place that is aligned with that critical control point? Can I inspect all traffic coming in and out of the cloud? Can I inspect all traffic moving laterally within the cloud? And
Mm-hmm.
can I use principles like zero trust network architectures to implement security in those critical places so that even if I have a vulnerability somewhere else in my network, I have compensating controls in place that can prevent it from being exploited? And so the idea behind the cloud native security fabric is really a fundamental rethinking of those first principle security controls: firewalling, microsegmentation, macro segmentation, encryption for all the data that's being transferred across the network. And
Mm-hmm.
we want to do that in a way that is deeply, deeply integrated with the cloud providers So leveraging the cloud provider APIs that delivers the experience like a cloud native service. So you don't have to think about things like auto scaling or performance or throughput, or the infrastructure just kind of works. And that ties directly into the cloud operational model. So infrastructure as code, policy
Hmm.
as code, right? So that the developers can actually help maintain their firewall policies in the pipelines that they use to deploy their applications. That really allows us to operate with speed. Imagine if I could give the developer the ability to say, hey, I need access to these three services, and as long as that fits inside of security's guardrails, the network will allow it to happen, right? So instead of having a 2 week response time, we have a 5 minute response time when the pipeline runs.
Hmm.
Imagine if I could implement my firewall policy inside of the Kubernetes deployment files, right, in the language
Yep.
that the container teams want to see, and that if
Mhm.
the network is automatically responds to changes in those containerized applications. So the cloud native security fabric is really that. We're taking relatively well established software defined networking principles. Our CTO was one of the founders, or one of the original engineers on VMware's NSX product. I worked in
Hmm. Hmm.
several different microsegmentation domains at Cisco, both in the network space and the agent oriented space. And so we have an immense amount of experience here on what it means to secure workloads.
Hmm.
And workloads are different than users. Like there's a reason that workloads don't have and they don't have they're not in HR, they're not a contractor, they don't probably have an AD group that they're a member of. They are, what app do I support? What data
Hmm.
classification do I have? Am I a PCI endpoint, right? Am I a
Yep.
database? what
Yep.
what what does it look like? And so those attributes, the performance requirements, the latency requirements, they all make workload security very different. And that's really where our expertise lies. So the Cloud
Hmm.
Native Security Fabric is a software-defined solution that lays on top of your multi-cloud environment, AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, Alibaba. We also, we support a lot of large multinational organizations, so we excel when you are multi-region as well, making it really, really simple to
Hmm.
regain control of the perimeter by
Hmm.
layering on those secure network services on top of the cloud.
Hmm. So when enterprises deploy this solution, basically they get the safeguards that they require, and at the same time they get the visibility. And
Yes.
yep. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, one of the first questions I ask people is like, can you see everything that's coming out of in and out of your cloud? Because
Hmm.
seeing before you can like asking if you can control it is a completely
Yep.
different question, right? Like that's ideal, but most people don't
Yes.
even have step one, which is like you can't see it in the first place.
Yes.
So just getting visibility, then moving into the ability to control the traffic, we
Hmm.
do that really, really elegantly. So I
Hmm.
one of the things with our SaaS offering, we call it Aviatrix Platform as a Service.
Hmm.
In under 10 minutes, you should be able to get visibility into all traffic, all of that internet control point,
Hmm.
um, for an application. And you can start
Wow.
small. You can start with just one app,
Yep.
and then you can kind of expand and blanket it across the
Hmm.
rest of your environment. So we want to be able to deploy perimeter security in under 15 minutes without the app even knowing.
Wow, wow. And I guess they can apply the rules according to, different applications, different regions and stuff.
Yeah, we absolutely. So our policy language is designed to be very developer friendly. In fact,
Hmm.
the users don't the people who are authoring the policy should not have to know anything about the control points where the policy is being enforced, because that's one of the big frictions. Like if a developer says, "Oh, I got to know when my traffic goes through a firewall and where it needs to be enforced," like we've
Hmm.
already we've already we're lost in translation already.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so our policy model is identity based. I call it, we build our policy based on tags and attributes. So an attribute is something that the workload can't control. It's like, I'm in this account, I'm in this region, I am, you know, I have this unique identifier. A tag is, part of your pipeline. I am this app, and when I deploy this app, it automatically gets tagged, and that can then be used in your firewall policy as well. So it's intent based, and it
Hmm.
makes it really, really easy to implement the security policies that align with like your compliance requirements or things like that. Now, we
Mm-hmm.
also include the ability to discover and recommend policy, and we have some unique AI algorithms that will help highlight which behaviors are the most at risk in the environment as well, so that you can quickly identify places that are risky. We actually just launched a agentless assessment tool that will give
Mm-hmm.
you an idea of what, potentially risky behaviors you have running on top of your cloud networks, and then you can grow from the assessment tool into, ongoing visibility and enforcement with us.
Wow, awesome. I guess, it sounds like a very interesting solution, and probably, if we have the chance, we would like to see it being demoed. But,
Yeah.
till then, I guess, we really had all the great insights talking to you today, especially on the security gaps in cloud environments and Aviatrix role in this space. So thank you, Chris. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, my pleasure. And I'll put one more nugget out there before we finish. We really, really want this to be accessible because we are passionate about making a positive impact on security postures in the cloud. So we recently launched a starter tier for the product. It's
Mm-hmm.
focused on egress security, which is that outbound channel to the internet, which is one of the most important and easiest control points to implement. And we
Mm-hmm.
give customers, we call them nodes, but 50 VPCs or VNets in your cloud for a very low price. You can actually save money with the product just by using us to replace NAT gateways and set yourself up for better security.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want it to be extremely accessible.
Oh, wow. Okay, so I guess even smaller enterprises, can basically
Yep.
have access to, such a good solution and
Yep.
such an important one, especially, when it comes to cloud and all the complexities. So I guess, this in the era of cloud, you need security that is basically can level up, your safeguards to the level that you need to secure all the workloads that you have
Exactly.
and that are ever expanding. Okay, so thanks again, Chris. So I guess that's for today. So to everyone tuning in, thank you guys for listening. If you want to learn more, visit aviatrix.ai. And follow us for more updates and insights as we continue to uncover the latest in technology and telecommunications. See you in our next session. Bye bye.